Good evening, everyone. Hi, Kelly, Shin, and Salem. How are you?
Hi.
Hello. Hi.
It's a pleasure and an honor to be moderating today's session, part of the varied program of the Cultural Summer Camp hosted by the Ministry of Culture and Knowledge Development and entitled Starters, Cultural Exchange Through Design and Culture. The collaboration between Fكرة, based in Sharjah, and PaTi, Paju Topography Institute in South Korea, stemmed from the very kind invitation and connection from the Ministry of Culture back in February or March, as part of the UAE and Korea Cultural Dialogue Initiative in 2020. So in today's session, we will be discussing the initiative framed as an online educational experiment between 13 students, 6 from Korea and 7 from the UAE, with the intention of creating an exciting cultural exchange through design and food. The design process, the final outcomes, the mediums that have been chosen by the students, the designers, and the stories that I have created. And at the end, we'll also be looking at some commonalities and differences related to the design practice and the learning of each other's culture. So without further ado, I would like to immediately ask our panelists to kindly introduce themselves and their organizations.
You guys go ahead.
Kelly, Kelly, Shin, please.
Salem should go first.
Should I go? Okay, I'll go. It's fine. Hi, everyone. My name is Salem Al-Qasimi. I'm the founder and principal of Fكرة. Fكرة is an organization based in Sharjah. We started in 2006 as a graphic design studio, an experimental and research-led design studio. In 2011, we started a platform called Fكرة, which is a platform that uses design as a means to research and look into culture. And then 2017, we opened up Fكرة Campus, which is a space, a co-working space, a cafe, an experimental gallery, an art and design library, and a rooftop. And 2018, we inaugurated the first Fكرة graphic design biennial, which was the first graphic design biennial in the region. Yeah, this is it for Fكرة. I also used to teach at the American University of Sharjah from 2011 until 2018, and then NYU Abu Dhabi for a semester. Currently focusing on Fكرة, and we're developing a lot of different educational programs with residencies. This current residency that the exhibition is online now. If you guys visit it, is in partnership with MISC Art Institute in Saudi, and developing other different kind of thematic programs for Fكرة in Sharjah.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Kelly, Shin, the floor is yours.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Hi, we are from PaTi, Paju Typography Institute, and we are formed in 2013 in a city of Paju, and especially in Paju Book City, where we have a lot of publishers and printers are working. It's industrial city, specially made for the books. And we are independent design school, and we have 4-year undergraduate courses, and we have 2-year graduate course, and we have around 100 students, and we are graphic design and typography oriented design school. And our founder is An Sang-soo, worldwide known graphic typographer, and with many graphic designers in Korea. We are cooperative, and yeah.
That's enough, maybe. Yeah.
Yes, and that's the building you see on our background.
Nice.
It's the school.
Or a virtual background.
Yeah.
Hopefully soon we can visit you. I can't wait.
Please.
Please.
Yeah, we are so excited.
Yeah. Kelly is in charge of
Green Design Lab
and
at PaTi.
Yeah, and I am in charge of MA, postgraduate course of PaTi.
Amazing.
Very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Great. Let's get into it. So, starters.
Yeah.
Chonche in Korean and Maqblat in Arabic. Who would like to start sharing? Maqblat. Sorry. Who would like to kind of
Sure.
sharing how it all started?
Yeah. I'll share screen also, so everyone can see what we've been up to. I mean, this journey started really when we were put in touch with PaTi. Fكرة and PaTi got together, and we were supposed to have a conversation on the state of graphic design and in both Korea and the UAE. And it was really interesting. But I think one of the conversations that was happening with us is actually thinking and proving how design could be used. First of all, what is design? And how could design start bridging cultures or starting a conversation? What does design do? And how is it, what does it mean? How is it also practiced in different cultures? And things like that. So I think one thing that we were thinking about is that when PaTi and Fكرة got together was that it would be very boring to sit and just talk about that. So instead of just showing that, we decided to do a little experiment through design. And so we thought, why not do a workshop? And that workshop would bring together students from the UAE and bring students from Korea and in a 1 week long online workshop where they would, each student would bring a dish from their own, from their culture, and then we would give it to the other person in the other country, and then the other person would respond to it somehow, in whichever kind of way they wanted to, in whichever format. And so we held these critiques throughout the weeks with students, and we did something really interesting. But first, we wanted to start off with, this idea of the exchange. And also it was really interesting because we didn't, in the UAE, we didn't know how to write or read Korean. And Shin and Kelly also didn't know how to read and write Arabic. And it became this kind of experiment where, let's see what happens, can we start learning from this process or not? And so we began by thinking about the name. And so we came up with the name as Starters, because it's a starter of a conversation, but it's also starters as in dishes. But although the meals are not necessarily starters, but it's the idea of that. So what we did was we wrote down the word Maqblat in Arabic, and I gave it to Shin and Kelly and asked them to design it, to write Maqblat or to kind of figure it out. And then likewise, they gave me the word Chonche, which is starters, and I would design it. And then we kind of put it together to see what happens. So maybe Kelly and Shin, you guys can talk about this and what you did with these two different approaches. How natural for you guys was to write Arabic in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
No, it was really interesting.
Instead of writing, I think I just draw what was on my screen you send us, and just copied the image.
How about in this one?
I mean, we didn't even know we had to write from right side to left
left.
side. So we were like a bit confused the time.
interesting.
And we noticed immediately that this one could look easily like a table with the people in joining food together and sharing experience together. So it was very innate that it came out like that.
Yeah.
So
I mean, also it was really interesting because Eleanor can write Arabic. And then we were trying to do, like, I was looking at, looking at some of the writing that that was done. I was like, wait, it doesn't look like someone didn't know how to read or write, Arabic. It was like, it was really well done. And then it was my attempt to take on John Che, and then the first thing I would, I showed it, and then Shin and Kelly were like, "Oh, it looks like a child wrote it for a foreigner," which was really funny. And then I started to I tried to fix it and try to perfect it a little bit.
Salim, I remember there was your comment to my writing, by the way.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think it's also really interesting because I think with text, what is so interesting is that once you start to recognize the letters, you kind of write them down as letters. But if you don't recognize them as letters, you kind of write them down as forms, or you kind of draw them in a way. So the approach becomes a little bit different. And it was, and I mean, yeah, it was really, really interesting. So this was kind of my take on John Che. First, I started with this actually, where I started to write it down and then try to copy it. There are different iterations where I drew it, but it looks really messy, so I didn't really include it here. But then, the final one really was both of us putting both of those together, and the idea was that Maqbellat was the table, and the John Che, the writing in Korean, was in the middle as the food, and people around it kind of sharing that.
What about the colors of John Che?
The colors, oh, I completely forgot now which colors and why did I choose the colors. Do you guys remember why?
This was just we got from you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I don't remember. I remember choosing colors based on I created a mood board, but then I chose colors based on different ingredients, and then I just faded them a little bit so to make them a little bit more playful. But yeah, I just wanted it to be playful. But some of the colors are from ingredients like the green and the pink, like seafood, or or the green, like vegetables, things like that. But it was just in general. And then I started to fade it down a little bit. And then kind of looking at different mood boards, I guess, from different artworks that I've seen, and from coming out from Korea. But it isn't, it was like a really fast thing. So it started off with us, it started off with us doing this kind of collaborative back and forth thing. Although we did it really, really fast, but I think that was the point, and then to see and to learn from this exercise, I also realized how, for me, when I was doing this, I realized how, because I didn't know, I was looking at the forms, but of the letters, but I didn't know how flexible it was in terms of, can I really separate these lines? And I was separating them and playing around, and I kept asking Kelly and Shin, can I, is it readable? Is it? And they're like, yeah, it's readable. It's fine. You can still, it's recognizable. So it was really interesting to think about it that way. And this was an exercise that was happening really, really fast.
Yeah, it was.
So that was really, really
2
interesting.
days, yeah. And also remember the conversation between you guys about the type. Can you maybe make this one a little bit longer, a little bit shorter, just so that it could really balance out very well?
Yeah. No, I mean, just thinking about forms, right? It's thinking about typography and formal aspects of typography. I mean, this is the thing, with design, there are these things that there are proportions in typography, and these proportions are them, or you learn them, and then you can kind of play around with that. It's the same thing with Arabic, with I mean, I'm talking in general, with any kind of letter form or any type of type in general, just thinking about that, or I think maybe ever exercise, maybe general, but like I think, or I learned it that way, is that I learned to learn the basics and the proportions and the principles, and then, knowing those will allow you to be flexible to kind of break away from them and start doing different things. So in this case, knowing letter forms in general, in English and Arabic, I was able to kind of take that thought and apply it within what I understood as letter forms in Korean, and shapes. And I think this is the same thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kelly and Shin, but I feel like this is what you were doing. And because you have created this kind of beautiful approach and drawing of this typography that it felt very well balanced because of our understanding of it. And we knew like what are the risks that we can take and some of the risks that we didn't. Like, I don't want to create like a high contrast, kind of alphabet, which means that it's very thick and thin, because I didn't know the proportions. So I created like a kind of a mono, or like something that has one weight in a way. And then I played around with that, so it just became like different weights and different lines, so it didn't matter. Yeah.
It was fun.
I don't know, what was your experience, Kelly and Shin, like when you were doing the Arabic? You were mentioning like the idea of like, you didn't know it was written from right to left. You drew it from left to right at the beginning. But once you knew, did that change anything, or no, it didn't matter?
I actually practiced writing from left to right, but it didn't really look good. So as a final, I just had to write from left to right. Honestly, so that's
no. I mean, it's absolutely
right.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, because I write in both English and Arabic, it's easy for me to be able to, switch immediately from English to Arabic. But it's nice. Yeah. I think let's go into the details of what we're doing.
Yeah. So can you just maybe, you can start rolling out the presentation. And while you do that, we can start sharing how the process was, how the students reacted, what they produced.
Yeah, I think maybe I can start by saying that it was, first of all, this was a complete experiment. We didn't know anything. We didn't know how it will go. We didn't know what the outcome was going to be. All we knew was that, and it's like a very, in a lot of different design exercises where we would allow room for students to kind of explore and not limit them so much, but at the same time, there is an expectation of something that it is done within a week, which means that it's not going to be a feature film. We knew that it's going to be a very small scale, but we didn't know like kind of problems, like technical problems that they would have, and these are some of the things you will see in this, technical problems they would have, or like, questions, cultural questions they would have, and even taking risks. The idea of also doing something that belongs to another culture and not knowing what to say was a little bit risky, because it felt like at the beginning where students were maybe not shy, but it's like, it's a big deal to actually take some dish from someone else's culture and reinterpret that. So that was an interesting thing. And we were there for students. We had it was 1 week. We had 3 critiques online. And we had one with just Fikra, and then both Fikra and PaTi together, and then another one with just Fikra, or the same thing. Like Fikra and PaTi had separate ones, and then we came together for the second one, and then Fikra and PaTi had the different sessions. And then we had the 4th one was the final presentation.
How was the joined up critiquing?
It was great.
It was really great.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, look, I would say also with every design exercise, the goal is to learn something, not from the students, not by the students, but I selfishly want to learn something. And that's why I try to collaborate and we try to do these things. As designers, we're constantly learning. And although we are kind of instructors of these, or workshop leaders, or whatever you call them, facilitators of these workshops, we are facilitators, but we are by no means experts in the sense that we know everything about these cultures. We don't. And this was an opportunity for us to learn from the students as well, and the stories that they will share and the things that they will research. So it was really interesting.
Can we see some of the work?
Yeah. So this was just process. Sorry, I'm running the presentation, so that's why I'm talking a lot. I'm sorry. Feel free, Kelly and Shel, to interrupt me, please. It was, we encouraged students to really experiment and to just, go out there and, maybe visit some places or really read about these recipes and these dishes and try to interpret them. And we realized like a lot of students from the UAE were writing and doing Korean. Actually, we also figured out there was one student who actually spoke Korean, and she was really interested in Korean culture, and she learned it. And so she wanted to participate in the workshop, because of her love for the Korean culture, and it was really interesting. And we had like students from different universities, from 2 universities, but it was an interesting kind of mix. So this was kind of an approach, and some students just wanted to portray the dish itself, the colors and the feeling of the dish. Some of them wanted to tell a story of where this dish came from and the history of it. Some people wanted to experiment completely with something completely fictional. It was really interesting.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, it was a really interesting kind of take with that. I mean, here you can see some students also writing in Arabic from Korea. You can see in the bottom right, and also like making connections and learning about UAE. Like one of the students was looking at the what was it, the Asida, and then she was she started linking it to different kind of looking at different islands in the UAE, looking at looking at the shapes of it, and then started to go deeper into that and looking at the history of the UAE, which was really interesting. And likewise, we had a student from Zayed University who looked at who was interested in this recipe that came, that dish that came, that Korean dish that actually came from, it was part of a story that was told and came from the north, and this entire thing. And these were some things that we didn't know about our own culture, which was a really interesting kind of learning experience as well. So this is kind of an overall showing what students have created. So some students created these different posters, some of them like booklets, some of them, series of drawings, 100 drawings, I believe one of the students was making. So it was really, really, really interesting. Another person was doing, Korean students, she was doing, looking into balalit, which is a UAE dish, and then using noodles from different places, which was really interesting also. And then like asking people to comment on it, and she gave it to people and, asked them to comment on it. And I think it was, like some of the students from the UAE who I was having like, immediate kind of constant conversations with. They were, talking about, does this make sense? Do you think this would be readable? Do you think this represents that? And a lot of the times I don't know, because I don't read Korean, but I feel a specific something when I see these specific posters. And some of them are just merely a translation of these kind of the words or of the dish itself. And some of them are maybe more of that has an additional story. And
And Kelly and Shin, when you had your mentoring with your students, what was the main kind of approach that they were sharing with you? Any particular question or process that I wanted to share, or anything that you saw throughout the week?
I think when we were doing the critique with Korean students, since we both of us and Korean students are very new to UAE food, so we tend to talk about our fantasy rather than the reality. So when we had the session that we did together with Salem, we had kind of had a good time for us to realize what the reality was, and to get kind of checked up, and what we were doing was really helpful. So we kind of started very free, and then in the middle, after your critique, we had more like specific, we could get some ideas.
Were they more concerned about the manifestation of the outcome or about the research that they were doing? Because I remember some of your students went far, far away. They decided to go to specific souks in South Korea, and they went to some mosques, and they started reading the Quran, and they were mentioning about dates, and they really went in depth. So I was wondering whether they were more concerned about with the abstract or with the process.
I think we kind of suggested them to really cook those by themselves. So that we have more information.
Because we were having like online like critique, so we were afraid of lacking the real stuff, like the
reality,
like a smell of the food, or like the temperature when you cook those dishes. So we encouraged them to experience it. First,
try the ingredients they can find in Korea, and just interpret what they can do with your recipe.
It was great.
I think from that process, students really got excited.
Also, they feel more free than before.
After experiencing cooking.
That's interesting.
Very nice.
Yeah, I mean, same thing here. Students, some students wanted to. I didn't encourage them to cook. I just didn't. I thought maybe it's a great idea, but I just didn't. If they wanted to, they will. But I didn't say anything. I didn't encourage them or discourage them from it. But there were some students also that cooked and actually used the cooking as part of their final outcome. I mean, should we go through them so that we can maybe? This is Habiba, a US student. She's the one that spoke Korean. One of the japchae, I think it was called.
Japchae.
Japchae, and it was a noodle kind of dish, and this was really interesting because there was, and I think all students, I think I have to say that the final outcome is not the only thing that they worked on. They worked on so many different iterations and so many different approaches. But they felt like maybe this is this is the one that they wanted to submit at the end or showcase at the end. So it was an interesting, you know, I think maybe I don't want to go into details in all of them, because then it's, you know, we have 13 different things, and it'll take us a long time. It
becomes a 2-hour workshop.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, it's just to show the different kind of formal approaches. But it was really interesting. This is candied sweet potato, and you can see the colors, the, you know, the effect of, you know, how the typography kind of integrates with the background, the foreground. This is just a variety of 2 different posters of the same thing, basically.
The Korean is really great.
Yeah.
It works really well.
It's beautiful. I think this is a US student, I believe, also. Hannah, this is also a very interesting kind of street food thing, right? Is that correct? If I'm wrong, is that? Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting also to see how this started off and how it ended. Like, I think Hannah started with doing this kind of, was it like a kind of cartoon drawing? Is there a specific name for it? What is it called?
A webtoon?
Yeah, webtoon, yeah. So like a webtoon kind of thing. And then it just developed into this poster. And I think it really works well. What do you guys think? Do you think it gives the impression of the
dish?
Yeah.
What is it called, this dish?
Tteokbokki.
It's a student's
favorite,
student's favorite food.
Yeah, tteokbokki.
Oh, really? Okay.
Like street food, and that the, how can I say, the drawings on the board,
like street,
and the webtoon. It's all like connected. It's really well merged.
Yeah, this is also. This is a beautiful one.
Kamjaju.
Porridge.
Porridge, nice. Yeah, I mean, this is also this one was a little bit, you know, she tried different things, and I think where she wanted to interpret some of the geometric shapes were some of the interpretation of that, but the ingredients is actually what's typography, basically written in the same ingredients of the actual dish. And she wanted this kind of format, I remember, because it was like the cooking board, and that she wanted to reflect in this. And so it was a very kind of straightforward interpretation.
Yes.
Maryam Ligbasi, this was really interesting. This was the one where the student started to think about so many different things, where she started to develop these patterns, the geometric shapes and stuff like that. And then she started creating these little folded pamphlet, not the one that you see here, but she created another kind of folding technique where there are some inserts in this book. And this entire project was interesting because it was this idea about the dish itself and where it came from. How it came from the north, and the entire like an entire story around it. So she translated that into Arabic, and she created this entire booklet about about the recipe itself, but also about the story, which was really interesting. This is where, this is one of those like projects where you really learn. I mean, we learned from all the students, but I think this one, there's a really interesting story and narrative behind where the dish actually came from, how it started, how it was replaced, like the ingredients started being replaced.
Yeah.
As a Korean, we also didn't know so much information about this food. And I was really surprised to find out
the whole story behind.
No, absolutely. Saba. This was this was also Sijini. Sojibi.
Oh, she included a big text.
Yeah. So I mean, it was also, this was a really interesting one where she started to you know, to do different experiments with typography, try to draw it and try to look at the colors of the actual dish and try to kind of mimic that into this kind of poster, and have these letters interact the same way that it's a soup, right? Or what is it?
Yeah, soup. Yes.
With hand-cooked noodle.
Hand-cooked noodle, yeah. So this is kind of the idea that you wanted to do, like, and the same colors, and the idea that these letters are kind of floating in this thing, and so, yeah. Tala did that really interesting. I really like the kind of very strong typographic forms and letters. So could you remind, like, what is it? How do you pronounce it?
Nakopse.
Nakopse. And then each vowel, na means something, and it means something, and se means something, right?
Yeah.
And intestine and shrimp.
Yeah.
And so this was the idea, like she divided them into 3 different posters and represented the ingredients, like shrimp, intestine, and octopus. And use these colors interchangeably to kind of also like the flavor, to kind of reflect the flavor of the dish as well. And this was also a really interesting learning experience for them because they didn't know anything about these dishes, right? So they would go and try to understand it. What does it mean? Some of them cooked it. Some of them were not able to cook, but you know, they kind of learned about it and interpreted the dishes visually. I love this part.
This was so much fun.
Yeah.
I'm interested to hear from Bud if they end up having a party in
oh my God.
university.
We couldn't meet together because of COVID-19 yet, but we will.
Oh, interesting. So yeah, could you guys tell us a little bit about Bud's process? Maybe talk to us through it or what it was.
Yeah, instead of getting the real ingredients, she got those artificial ingredients from art shop.
Yeah. And we asked them to, encourage them to cook.
Go to the market and get
at least try. But she found that she can't find really like many ingredients, or she
wasn't so eager to find the real ingredients.
Was Typhoon well with him?
But in a way, it's kind of going like a supermarket as a designer, you know, art supply store in like Korea. It's like really big and you can buy everything in one store. So you go there, you become really happy and you can find anything. So yeah, she found some interesting materials like that. How can I say that one?
Ball.
Yeah, bowls.
Yeah.
And some others.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. I remember, like, it's very also festive, and we were talking also about how, you know, Ligimat is also happening during Ramadan, and then it's also, you know, usually when you break fast at the end, you sit and you have Ligimat also. But also the idea of the flavors are being, like, the flavor is very sweet, and you know, it's the idea of I think Bud was thinking about, okay, why not make, you know, a cake of Ligemat, and like we create a cake pop party out of, you know, and then create these kind of fictional kind of or this kind of interpretation, very kind of funny interpretation of it, which I thought was really interesting. And, you know, you were thinking about having a party, and this is, you know, the hypothetical, you know, and this is the poster for Ligemat. Yeah, there's this one's the balalit with the different noodles.
It's your favorite dish.
Yeah, it is my favorite. We had some today, actually, me and my daughter. Yeah. I mean, Jiwon wanted to look at how could she make balalit using different noodles. So she created it using Korea Korea. I mean, that's Korea balalit and Italy balalit, the Italian noodles, and Thai balalit. And then she did this kind of review of it. So similarity, how similar is it? Evaluation, not that great, The Thai balalit was the closest, I believe. But it was an interesting kind of take of thinking about balalit.
And Juwon had a friend there. They were feeding her all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. So sorry for her.
Was it Shin or Kelly tried it? Both of you tried it, or no? One of you?
No, we didn't.
Oh, you didn't.
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't. Okay.
No. Yeah.
Kim did the really interesting really interesting story. I think also there's something, and this is where we realized there was a technical problem, when you know that you can't type Arabic unless if you have the Middle Eastern version of Adobe so that it does right to left. But it's like you can now read it from left to right and the letters are disconnected. But it was interesting, I think it was also one of the things that was kind of part of the challenge. And there's like, what can we do to fix this? But because of time, things like that. But I loved this project a lot because it was a complete different take on the dish. So it was kind of, it was the asida, and then what she did was she started looking Google Earth at the UAE, and then looked at islands, and then started to create this narrative out of these islands that for her looked like a asida dish, basically. And it was just like coming up with these kind of illustrations also of this and this very kind of fictional story where she's saying there was a big giant fairy in the sky who likes to cook. One day she was making asida and stopped to make it and played peekaboo with her friend. Accidentally, she poured the salt into the sea. She wanted to turn back the time, but she couldn't. So she had some idea to return. She planned to make Salt Island. The name of the island became Sira Bunair. So it was, it was just like this entire kind of fictional
nice tale
story.
Very brave.
Yeah, this is Chabab. And it was, I don't, you guys go ahead. Maybe you can explain better.
Well,
So I mean, one of the things that happened with this is that Sujin, was doing these different iterations or thinking about Chabab, and she didn't know what to do with it. And then finally she landed on the actual texture of the Chabab. And looking at these different little, the holes in them and things like that. And so she decided to create like this kind of planet about that, planet of Chababs, and, and just trying to think of the form of it and then like reinterpret it into something else. And just like, writing also Chabab in Arabic and kind of, she did different iterations and different drawings also of Chabab and circles and stuff like that. There was interesting kind of drawings. So that was, I love this one also. This was so really interesting. Yeah. Yunji did this, these pouches. Maybe you guys can explain it or.
The lucky bag. Yeah. She thought about making a lucky bags for
3 dates.
Three dates for this.
Yeah, for Ramadan.
Yeah.
For Ramadan
For
period.
Ramadan.
Yeah.
It is. It's like survival kit.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was really interesting. I mean, one of the things that she was really interested in thinking about how Ramadan, we, how in the UAE they give out these dates and, and Ramadan to break fast, whether on the street or whatever. So she thought of making these pouches basically with, with the stuff in them, dates and giving them away. And so this was a really interesting kind of take on that.
This pouch actually works in Korea. It's a traditional pouch that we call lucky pouch.
Yeah.
Lucky pouch, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
we carry this on a New Year's Day after we bow to elderly people and they give us money and we put the money in this bag. Children.
Like our idea, which is like during Eid, children go around and older people give them money also, and they have these kind of pouches or wallets, whatever.
Nice.
Very similar.
Very
Yeah.
similar.
They always get money.
yeah, I know, right?
This is the last one, right?
Yeah, last one.
Kyung.
Palali?
No.
No.
Yugyong?
Malajaid.
Yeah, محلة. Yeah.
Mahala. Yeah,
Mahala.
Yeah.
Mahala.
So she did how many? 100 different postcards?
Yes.
I
Yeah,
believe?
100.
She finally
Um,
finished with the
100
postcards.
Wow.
Yeah. What was the idea? Could you maybe talk about it a little bit?
So she's the one who actually visited mosque.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
She so soon she I think she situated apparently in the middle of Ramadan kind of vibe.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
firstly, she tried to like draw or paint some people having really good thoughts during the Ramadan days, and then she find out actually after you gave her the opinion that it's for like sharing. I mean, like,
You eat this with many people.
Family and people. Yeah.
Preparing for everybody.
Yeah, you don't cook for only your family or some specific people, but for everyone. So like for 100 people. So she took that kind of critique from you, and finally she came up with, okay, maybe I can like cook 100
cook for 100
people.
Mahala. And share
from postcards, like creating these different artworks, unique artworks, 100 different unique drawings, and then kind of giving them away to share it with people.
Yes.
Which is really interesting. So these are 13 different artworks that were created by 13 students from both the UAE and Korea. And I mean, it was such an interesting 1 week, learning process, because we learned a lot about each other's cultures, but also about our own cultures, and also how people read our own culture through food. Which was, interesting, and where it goes, like how far it could be stretched, like what food can do, or these kind of just by giving someone a dish to think about that dish, how could they think about it and start thinking about culture and things like that. And I mean, there's a lot of also similarities between the two cultures that we found, and it was just such an enriching experience. Also talking to the students, it's also really interesting to see that the students come from very different levels. Some of them first-year students, some of them fourth-year students, but they all came together producing these really interesting artworks, but also most importantly telling these very, very different stories and really learning from this kind of process. And we wanted to show how design could be used as a tool and to facilitate cultural exchange and dialogue. And in this case, it has proven that way. And so I think, for this session, we wanted to show a process of design, because maybe we don't know like what kind of audience we would have. People, maybe they don't know much about design. So we wanted to give kind of a glimpse into the process of design. And I think maybe people need to, or like we generally think about, or in general, like I think there's a misunderstanding about how design is just maybe to produce aesthetically beautiful things, but actually design is much, much more than that. It's about the process, about storytelling. It's about about addressing a specific topic or problem, or asking questions, or, you know, there's so many uses, and design is extremely broad to be limited to just for aesthetical purposes. So I think, I mean, this was a really interesting project and experiment that we did, and I loved working with PaTi and with Shin and Kelly. I mean, they're absolutely amazing. But yeah, it was thank you.
So because we are coming towards the end of the session, we are happy to take questions from the public.
Okay.
And I actually have already one here for you guys. How challenging was it reinterpreting food through design as a vessel to convey culture as opposed to other mediums?
Say the question one more time. I
Okay.
think it's
how challenging was it to reinterpret food through design as a vessel to convey culture as opposed to any other medium?
Okay. So how challenging was it?
It was, yes, to interpret food through design.
I think, I mean, if I should I go, Kelly, Shin, or do you have you?
Go ahead.
I mean, I think the nice thing about this is the idea that it was an experiment and there's no mistakes. There are literally no risks. And it was the opportunity to learn and to actually, if they are going to make mistakes, or if anyone's going to make mistakes, this is a good opportunity to make these kind of mistakes. But we don't know, like, it's so, like, what kind of mistakes anyone can make. But I think design in this approach is different to design when you're trying to design something for a business, like if it was a commercial or professional job, because then there are other risks and factors that you have to think about. But in this case, it's literally experimental. It was, you know, students could do whatever they want in whatever format. Actually, some students also did some animations. Hannah, I believe, she did some animations with her tteokbokki, I think, dish.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really interesting. Like, everyone would just do different things. So I think design in this case, it was not challenging in the sense that it was restrictive. I don't know if that makes sense, but it felt it was more liberating, and it was an opportunity, not an opportunity to simply design something, but it was an opportunity, and we focused on that. Like, the idea is not just about the design. The idea is, what does this mean? What did you learn from this? You know, what is the story kind of thing? What, you know, and it was, and we, you know, we mentioned from the very beginning, it was like, you know, it's a week's workshop. So, you know, we don't know the kind of expectation. We thought it was going to be just sketches, but people produced a lot more, which is great. But yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think?
It was not like challenging for us too. The reason why we chose food as our like starting point was like it has no wrong or right answer. It's just like something we enjoy.
Yeah.
So it was really like challenging for us.
Yeah, maybe it's challenging because it's not our food, and it was UAE food for Korean students. But thanks to Google, I think they didn't really had a problem to find out the information about the food.
Yeah.
The only one challenging point. Yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead.
The only one challenging point was some students were afraid of saying something like rude or
That's exactly what I was just gonna say.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think there was just that risk. Like, you know, it's like, you know, you're dealing with someone else's culture. You don't know what you can and cannot say. Is it okay to say this? But I think, I mean, we've tried to encourage students that it's okay. It's an open kind of thing. You know, if there was something inappropriate, then we will tell you, you know, if it's not inappropriate in that way. But I think it wasn't, like, it was completely open, and everyone was like very friendly, and everyone who anyway wanted to participate in this was someone who was interested in learning something new, and was open to kind of learning about a new culture that they're not necessarily very familiar with, or maybe one student is very familiar. But I think it was really interesting in that sense.
Yes.
Great. We have a couple of more minutes, so I invite the public to send us any questions. In the meantime, I can ask you what's next. In the meantime,
I mean, we're talking about it. I think this is definitely what we've agreed on, is that there's a lot of potential of collaboration, and you know, we are also thinking about somehow translating this project, maybe depending on a lot of different factors, if we're able to fund it or not. But it's you know, we're thinking about, you know, perhaps making some sort of exhibition, maybe printing a booklet with the outcome and the process of each student that would somehow collectively tell a story about Korea and UAE, but also an exchange, you know, which is really interesting. And then maybe, I mean, this is something that Shin, Kelly, and us, we were talking about, like, you know, could there be a second version? Could it be that we can travel to Korea, or, you know, they can come to the UAE, and we can see all of that potentially. But right now, I think we just ended this project, so we want to see how we can, you know, maybe this work can be published somehow, whether through an exhibition or a book or something like that. And
we just received this question, whether this project is going to be exhibited anywhere, or if there was a publication. So I think we've answered.
Yeah. So we just need to see what happens. Yeah, inshallah.
Do you guys have a very final roundup comment or feedback?
I think Korean students, they really wanted to talk more with UAE students. Yeah, that was maybe the only, thing that was kind of sharing.
A personal sharing. Nice.
Yeah. And also we were really thinking about, like, what does this mean, you know, doing everything online. The time zones are crazy. I'm sure, like, what time is it there? It's 11 p.m.
for you it's
in
very
Korea
late
right now. Oh, and happy holidays. You guys have a holiday now, right?
National Day yesterday.
The National Day, yeah. So congratulations. But you know, the time difference was difficult. Also, there is you know, Zoom conversations, the preparation for this. Like, I think there was these kind of, we thought it's going to be a lot hard, or I personally thought it's going to be a lot harder, but it wasn't. It was okay, and it was very, I think it was nice because everyone was easygoing. Kelly and Shin are like, you know, they're like, yeah, cool, you know, and we're like that too. So it was so it was really nice in that way, and I was so happy with the outcome, and I absolutely loved working with Kelly and Shin. It was such a really good group, and you know, of students and of, I think, facilitators. So it was I'm just really excited to see what happens next and where this goes.
We just had starter, so we need main.
Main and desserts.
Entrees and desserts, coffees
and teas.
Yeah, for sure. We wanted to have, remember, we wanted to have like a live session at the end, like to have a party in Korea and UAE, like online. But it's also very difficult, like time zones and all of this. So I don't know. Inshallah, maybe we'll visit you very soon with everyone, and you guys can visit us soon.
I think we're manifesting it's going to happen with desserts.
Manifesting, yes.
Great, guys. I would like to thank you.
Also, I have to say something. Sorry to interrupt. I have to say something. I want to thank MCKD Ministry for facilitating this workshop, because without them, this wouldn't have happened. So thank you so much for the ministry in terms of like putting us together. Also, funny story is that when we had the first conversation with PaTi, I was talking, and then all of a sudden it turns out that we've met 10 years ago when I was at RISD. So it was a really interesting
all
small
fellows.
World kind of moment. And also I want to thank, of course, PaTi, but I want to thank you, Eleonora, because you were also the person who was really organizing this entire thing and putting it together, and making sure the Zoom calls are working, and putting all the making sure all the students coordinating with them. So thank you so much for making this
pleasure.
easy for us.
So and I also would like to thank the ministry and their team who has supported us all the way and given us the entire time and freedom to come up with this and deviate from the very beginning of their suggested talk, and giving us the opportunity to really experiment something that we have never done it before. And I would also like to thank the students and the designer who, again, I'm gonna really quickly run their name, and please forgive my very insufficient Korean, but I'll do my best. So it's Myeongran Bud Susu Yoonji Yokyong Jiwon from Korea, and Hannah, Hadil, Mariam, Saba, Tala, Lara, and Habiba. And of course, last but not least, Shin and Kelly and Salim, because it's been such an amazing experiment. And I think everyone just loved to have this cultural exchange from afar, but very intense.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you everyone, and good night. Good evening. Masalama, everyone.
Masalama. Enjoy Italy, Eleonora.
Thank you.
And stay safe.
Enjoy Italy.
Stay safe, you guys.